We may not be running trains, but that doesn't mean the railway's not a hive of activity. So it gives me great joy to welcome you guys back and say welcome to In the Loop. Hello folks, welcome back, Happy New Year, and it's an absolute joy to be back with you guys once again. We're currently here in Ropley where they've started taking down the lights for the illumination trains which have just finished. So, without further ado, it's time for a quick fire look around the railway to see what's been happening since the last episode. So starting off here in the boiler shop, last time we were here we saw Canadian Pacific's foundation being welded. That's all now in, they've been trimmed down, corked, and this is some of the offcuts. They've also done a seam weld along the bottom to make that nice water and steam tight seal. Inside, Brian's been working on lapping the main steam pipe. It's a lot easier to do this when the boiler is upside down rather than when it's the right way up and suddenly you're reaching up to lap away. So yeah, again, really good substantial progress with this one. Looking at our famous little Blue Engines boiler, the tubes are currently in and they're being trimmed aside. The next thing that will happen is they'll get expanded, which is where this tool comes in. Essentially it's called a tube roller. This slots in, there's a load of rollers, this will spin round and you wind the plug in and it will slowly expand out and you get a nice steam or watertight seal, and that happens at both ends. Apart from that in the boiler, we've had smokebox wear plates being replaced, they're sacrificial, and Ed's currently working on the baffle for the smokebox door, so that deflects most of the heat rather than the door distorting. Now over to the carriage works. We're currently standing in our griddle car, this is our bar car. Fantastic for real L trains. This is one of the bar sections. You have the kitchen behind and then another bar section at the far end. It's currently in the carriage works for some remedial work. So on the inside there we're doing some stripping down, replacing some of the wood and varnishing. They're working on this door, which is just outside. They've tried to salvage what they can and it's going to be reskinned as well. Then in a few years time the coach will come back in for a full proper overhaul where it will be completely gutted and rebuilt. Of course the carriage boys, you can only do so much with the space you've got. Talking about making best use of the space, outside they're currently working on their new mess room and workshops below. Work's progressing incredibly well with that, and every time we come down something new's been added. Now aside from the griddle coach, well, you know how we saw lots of the steam illuminations coaches being brought into the coach, people would run along, rig them up. Well, now they've got to do the unenviable task of taking the full thing down. Lights on the inside, lights on the outside, underside have to be taken off, stripped down, cleaned, and then they'll be put away for storage. It's again an unenviable task and something that you never really consider actually happens at the end of steam illuminations until you see it happening. Anyway, let's pop outside. Well, Lady of Legend, it's time for her to return to her home in Didcot. She's performed valiantly over the steam illuminations period, now being cleaned out, split, ready to be put onto a low loader, and by the time you see this, she would have returned home. At this point, we can only say a huge thank you to our friends at Didcot Railway Centre for loaning us this magnificent locomotive. And yeah, another line ticked off the list for this locomotive and the places she's visited. Looking at 506, it's currently at the moment undergoing some running maintenance and has been split off. It'll soon be drained down because by the time you see this, it will hopefully be with our friends at the Great Central Railway for their gala. So guys, if you are there to watch it, do enjoy. It's a fantastic bit of kit and I'm sure the crews are going to love it. Now, since trains aren't running, this is the ideal opportunity to do some heavy maintenance on our running fleet, which is what's happening here with the 7F at the moment. Boiler-wise, it's having its annual exam, and they're also doing some work on some steam pipes, refitting some gaskets. Unfortunately, one of them does involve actually literally cutting through the smokebox floor to get to it, but as I said, this is the ideal opportunity to do it. Now onto our diesel fleet. Again, we're doing some running maintenance while there's no trains running. Our 08 shunter 377 or D3462 is currently in for some light maintenance. The other two are currently taking up the strain, shunting around the steam illuminations coaches, which are being cleaned off and, well, de-rigged of lights. Just goes to show that even though we're not running trains at the moment, it doesn't mean the work stops here at Ropley. Now, for today's episode, we're up in the top yard of Ropley to look at this. This is our Hampshire unit, affectionately known as thumpers for the very distinctive noise the engine makes when underway. These were the last units to operate the line before it was closed by beaching. so understandably is an important part of the railway's history. At the moment it's not running. Before COVID they were doing some work on the engine and reskinning, but now they've got a bit more work to do on the bodywork. So, to tell you a bit more about that and the unit in general, we'll pass you over to our operations manager, Richard.
We're up in the top yard sidings at Ropley. A bit of work been going on with our Hampshire unit. We've got a 2-car Hampshire unit, diesel electric multiple unit, number 1125, latterly 205025. It's a 2-car unit that was used between 1957 and 1973 on this railway, known as Hampshire units because of the area they worked in. And we're just really doing some work to assess its condition. It's been out of service now since 2019, and with the current climate of economics, we're just having a look really to see what we can do to resurrect it and do the best for it. So yeah, we'll have a walk along the side, and I'll just give you a bit of a sort of a feel about some of the issues that we're facing. Unit was built 1959, so she's had a fair life. They were actually built for 15 years. And the idea was that the lines that they operated on would be either closed or electrified in those 15 years. So to last till 2004 it came here, so not a bad investment really in truth, but starting to show her age unfortunately. So yeah, so there's a lot of rock, door pillars, skins. Unfortunately the early units had glass quarter light windows that rather than sitting in a frame they were actually arbour sealed like a putty. A flexible putty was actually stuck into the frames. The problem comes, the water then runs down, once the arbour seal starts to go brittle, it runs down then into the body side rather than out through the drain holes. And just on this next door here, we've got a quarter light that's clearly been leaking, which has led to sort of rot that's appearing, and it's actually blistering through the platework all the way down. It's probably knackered the door pillar in that, there's a wooden door pillar that the door closes into. And it's even bursting through the paintwork at the bottom here, so that's a fair indicator that there's some major rot going on behind it. Unfortunately, that's also impacting on the inside because any upholstery, there's hardboard panels with upholstery on it, it'll be impacting on that, creating damp, and it just takes forever to try and dry things out. Okay, so that's some of the problems we're dealing with on the outside. If we come along, we'll have a look on the inside, and we'll show you some of the internal damage that's been taking place with the wind and rain. Okay, so some of the problems we're dealing with within the train is it looks fairly tidy from the roof down. Once we get into the compartments, the same with the quarter lights. So where the quarter lights are stuck in, you can see sort of mould starting to come through the wood panelling. Particularly this side, there's like a hardboard cheek which is upholstered. And there's an awful lot of mould growing here as it's basically the unit's not warm and we can't keep the water out of it. It's a sort of an ongoing battle. The joys of unfortunately of having things that we can't replace living outside. So it's it's definitely suffering. So really at the moment it's a case of assessing how much work is required to get a price as to what that's likely to cost us, and how we can go about effecting a proper repair to keep the unit in service for the future. To be honest, it's critical that we keep this. This train, this 2-car unit used to be a 3. It was actually part of the last Hampshire unit departure from Alton on the 4th of February 1973. So we're very lucky to have our own last train that worked on the railway. The units are so important and are so far associated with this piece of railway that we owe it to the type to keep one as part of our own history. And it's so important from a economy point of view that we've got it as up our sleeve to fall in case of failures and high days and holidays. So if anyone wants to follow us, we've got a Facebook group. It's 1125 Thumper is the page, so you can follow progress on there as we find it. And the hope is to try and sort of actually put some numbers together and work with the Watercress Line Heritage Trust to provide some fundraising and hopefully find a way forward.
A huge thank you to Richard for showing us around there. You can see there's a bit of work to be done, but this is a frightfully important piece of rolling stock to the railway's history. This was the last thumper to operate over this line, so it's vitally important we get this back up and running again. And it'd be brilliant to have a DMU running here. So if you do want to keep track of progress of how this is going, follow 1125 Thumper on Facebook. I'll put a link in the description. And of course, if you would like to help fundraise for this, there'll be plenty of opportunities to do so. But at the moment, we need a lot of public support to get this kicking off again. Apart from it, that's it from us this time. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.